And so it is to be open to openness, to be open and available to your own infinity, your own immensity. You're not open to something, open to openness itself, open to the vastness of what you already are. Just in being here now, simply being here, utter presence, the disappearance of mind into presence, disappearance of mind into heart, into openness, to be invisible, not needing to be seen and heard, not needing to be known. To surrender all learned knowledge, to surrender the intellect into the vast open field, the immensity of the true essence nature, the immensity of the being that you are, that you have always been. Cannot take action to get here. It's in the letting go of doing, of trying, of effort, of needing, of wanting, of expectation, letting go of evaluating, analyzing this moment, and just being here, just as you are, aware of the thoughts that come and go, and able then to recognize that you are not the thoughts that are moving and changing. You are not the mind consciousness. You are not the story. You are not the name. You are not the form. You are the simple being that is aware of all that is moving and changing, and yet utterly untouched, unaffected by what is moving and changing. So to be aware of mind, of thoughts that come and go, is powerful. To watch, to be still and watch. And yes, another thought comes in, but to watch that too. And another thought comes in, and to watch that too. To see as the aware being how easy it is to get taken by a thought on a journey, and suddenly you are thinking. It is to be the aware presence of thinking, so that the attention of awareness can relax and simply be itself, can remember itself, simply being. So when we speak of being open to openness, we are offering an invitation to the one that imagines that they can do something, the possibility to just be open, to be open to openness, to be open without wanting anything, to be here without needing or having ideas or expectations, to just be here without ideas of what this is, to surrender the intellect and the learned knowledge, and to disappear as someone that wants and needs. And this is the being invisible. The me is so intent on being seen, on being heard, on being someone, having something to say about everything. What is it to be invisible? To stop following the impulse that needs to be seen and heard, understood, liked, loved, and to come to a depth of presence where the seeing is the self seeing itself, that listening is deep enough, that in the disappearance of someone, the listening is the open receptivity of your very own self. That nothing learned matters here, because all that you are is pure intelligence, a consciousness that is consciously awake to itself, knowing itself, and naturally intelligent. That nothing from the external, nothing that the mind thinks is important is needed here, even exists here. The mind only exists in the mind's idea of what it is. The mind is constantly thinking itself into existence and thinking itself important, and then desperately attempting to maintain its sense of self-importance, of being someone, of needing to be seen and heard and understood. But all of that is utterly irrelevant when it comes to freedom. It is freedom from all of that, freedom from all that obscures this natural shining light that you are, this wide open heart of love that you are, and that here in the fullness of being yourself, you are so met by your own presence. Everything that is longed for by the someone is actually reality, but it is in the presence of your own self that this fullness is recognized to be the unquestionable truth of who you are, plain and simple. That there is nowhere to get to, that no amount of effort or trying, wishing or wanting can bring you to yourself. It is simply in the awareness of all the mind wants, illuminating everything that acts as a distraction. And in the illumination, no action is needed, because the illumination itself illuminates that there is nothing there of value. There is nothing there, that the mind and all of the ideas are a self-perpetuating mechanism of thinking itself constantly into existence. When we inquire into the mind, nothing can be found Not a trace of anything can be found in the presence of here now. And so you see, the invisibility is not really a hardship. Invisibility is indeed freedom. It is freedom from the need to exist as someone, and the reality of being pure existence, so that the light that you are, the shining, radiant light that you are, the wide open heart of love that you are, can naturally know itself and shine and emanate this truth of who you are, without the need of being someone, without the need of being seen, of being praised, of being liked. That it is the invisibility, that is the humility that brings us to the divinity of who we are. But we have to welcome it. We have to welcome the light to obliterate the ignorance. We have to welcome the light to obliterate the ideas that can hold us captive. We are never truly captive or captured by ideas. That too is an illusion. And as we illuminate, as the light of awareness, all that we imagine is important. All that we imagine holds us bound. We realize in the light of awareness, in the light of truth, that there is nothing there. There is nothing there. When we are resting in the here now, it takes another thought to imagine the entanglement of thinking mind into a perpetuating existence. Without thought, who are you? Without thought, what is here? So of course, we cannot think our way into the knowing of this truth. We can only illuminate the habit of thinking and believing thoughts as the obscuration to the illuminated presence of being that is the natural essence of all beings. Just simply being. Being the still, silent presence that you have always been. In the openness to openness, there is this openness that invites the complete shift of energy from identification with mind and thinking to identification with essence nature, true identity, which is being reality. It is a deep relaxation of the habit to identify with thoughts, with mind consciousness. It is the relaxation of attention and a deep remembering of the timeless immensity of being that you are. And in this, the openness to the field, being the vast open field. The field is infinite, boundless, and ever free and ever present. And so as these words come, there is nothing to do, nothing to understand, not even really anything to listen to in the way the mind might imagine. And yet there is true listening happening. True listening is not happening as someone listening to something or someone. It is the open, receptive willingness to just be here, fully available, fully open, innocent, awake, alert to your own presence, without wanting or needing anything. And if there are threads of wanting or needing or interpreting, analyzing, having learned knowledge come forward and be believed, it is just to illuminate whatever attempts to act as an obscuration. Illuminate it as the awareness that is naturally aware. Illuminate everything that comes in as the awareness. Hold the attention as the awareness, illuminating, witnessing what is moving and changing, but not moving from the deep resting as the witnessing awareness. We are not attempting to stop the mind, but we are coming to see the mind in the light of awareness, illuminate mind consciousness, not just move through the habit and assumption of believing the thoughts. There is value to watching the thoughts. There is value to illuminating the habits of the me, illuminating the vasanas, illuminating the ways that the mind moves, illuminating how there is a habit to believe and follow the mind. Seeing the mechanics is of value when you are seeing the mechanics as the aware witness, illuminating the mechanics of habituated mind consciousness in order to illuminate and to reveal the robber that is constantly seeking attention for itself. As there is an illumination in the field of awareness, it is to see and feel and recognize that when there is awareness of what is moving and changing, the awareness itself that is witnessing naturally starts to naturally recognize its own stillness. It's as if the stillness of awareness presents itself. It recognizes the depth of its own presence. It starts to recognize the depth of its own stillness, its own beingness. And as awareness is recognizing its own aware beingness, attention starts to shift away from following the thoughts and the moving, changing, to a deeper resting in the being. A deeper resting here now. A deeper sense of being the being, being the aware being, natural and free, openness, that you are the openness, you are the simple being. That there is no thought that is of value. And the illumination of that truth brings a deeper sense of freedom. You see, there is nothing to believe. It's not about taking on board what the words are speaking to. It's about receiving the pointings in the immediacy of now and recognizing for yourself the illuminated truth that is already here. It is to test what is being offered in your direct experience and in the recognition and the receiving of the pointing and confirmation of that in the direct experience. It brings a deepening in the remembering that what is being pointed to you are. It's not in the future. It's not away from you. It's right here. You are the being that is simply being right here now. The stillness, the silence, the simplicity of being is who you have always been, what you have always been, the simple self, silent and free. And the invitation of satsang is to remember, to come into the deep remembering of who you have always been, into the company of yourself in the innermost openness of the being. Come into the company of your own truth, your own true nature, the true heart that is infinite and free, openness, emptiness. And so in the sense of disappearance of the someone, there is an emptiness and yet a fullness in the sense of being yourself, a fullness in being the lightness, a fullness in the wholeness of being, just being yourself, empty of all ideas, nothing to get, nothing to achieve. How can it be possible to achieve or get something that you already are? It is simply a deep relaxation out of the misunderstanding, out of falsehood, out of the mind that thinks it knows something about a lot of things. It's the surrender of all that you have imagined yourself to be into the naturalness of being yourself. True self is not a new superimposition of being a better someone. Being yourself is to let go of all of the ideas of who you are and be the simple essence being that is ever free. And everything the mind imagines about being yourself is, of course, just another whole bunch of falsity, another whole bunch of thoughts about something that the mind knows nothing about. So it is not to believe a single idea that the mind or the me has about this truth of who you are. It is to let go again and again through illuminating all of the falsity, all of the beliefs, all of the ideas, all of the intellects, learned information, and actually discover the wisdom of who you are, the wise being that you are, that is simple and free. Cannot come to true humanness until we come to empty out of the conditioned human. The condition is protection, defense. It is a set of ideas. It is like an outdated, a very outdated computer program. You cannot reboot it. You cannot update it. It is just to delete it and let the true, free essence, intelligence run right on the surface of life. Let the flow of intelligence that you are, that is consciousness, knowing itself consciously, be the lived, embodied light of this moment, here now. Be the living light, the living divine light. Invited in, it will take up residence. Of that you can be sure. Now this light, this divine light that you are, it is not shy and retiring, and yet it is waiting for your longing to call it forward. It is waiting for your devotion, for your true prayer. It is waiting for you to invite this divine light of your true nature. Because this light, although it is everything, this divinity is everything, it cannot come into a spaciousness, let's say, that's full of ideas, because there's no room, right? It cannot come into the clutter of ideas and beliefs. It cannot come in unless there is an openness, an emptiness, and a longing that pulls it in. But what you can be sure of is that send out the invitation with your longing, with your devotion, and with your silent prayer, and divine wholeness will come flooding in and take up residence. Of that, you can be utterly sure. But it does not work on the me's timeline, and it does not flood in to a space that is partially held captive by the mind and beliefs and ideas. There cannot be a coexistence. It is only in the surrender, the complete and utter surrender of everything that has been imagined, the protections, all of the defenses, all of the false knowledge. It is in the complete surrender, the willingness to be utterly invisible and to surrender it all to divinity, to God, to the Mother, to surrender it all to truth without knowing what that means or what it looks like, to feel the depth of faith in the light of your own aware being, that there is this natural flow that flows as a willingness to hand it all over. Hand over my will to thy will, to know that whatever is the what isness of divine orchestration, to surrender control, and ideas. Really, all that's being surrendered is a lot of ideas and a whole lot of tension and a whole lot of misery. So nothing to lose, nothing to lose. But the mind is very, very habituated to its own misery even. The mind is very habituated and even, we could say, addicted to its own misery. It finds comfort in what is familiar, even if it's miserable and uncomfortable. It nourishes itself by dwelling in illusory pain and self-loathing and all of the ways that the mind can be so mean and unkind to itself. It perpetuates and keeps itself alive, telling itself non-truths that create illusory pain in a pain body, like a layer where thinking and thinking and thinking begets more suffering, more misery. So we have to come to recognize this mechanism and not be fooled by anything that the mind offers. That we can come to a depth of freedom where we recognize that not a single thought is true. And this steadfastness to illuminate and illuminate and illuminate everything that tries to pull the attention away. To say no way, no way to the habits of the mind. And in saying no way to the habits of the mind, we are saying yes to the divine, yes to the longing, yes to the recognizable truth of simply being. And in saying yes, we are saying yes to the light coming in. We are trusting the deep sense of faith that we have, which is the knowing that is already in place. It is the knowing of being. It is the knowing of who we are that is already here. Consciousness is already here, awake and conscious of itself. And it is inviting the mind consciousness to let go of its hold and surrender into the flow of consciousness, where the flow of consciousness is flowing to consciously know itself. And as the light of awareness is shining and revealing the mechanics, the light of awareness reveals everything that is moving and changing, so that consciousness itself can still and come to a deep knowing of itself. We could say the thought waves settle out, the busyness of thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking, the mind consciousness into believing and thinking itself into existence, a false sense of the me existing. We come to a wider, open, expansive plain, a meadow, a freshness, an expansiveness of consciousness that starts to be recognized as stiller and quieter, calmer, a sanctuary. where the noisiness and the busyness is quietened into the stillness and silence of being, where consciousness recognizes itself as being consciously here, presence, alive and awake to itself. And the awareness that's here can then see itself in the stillness of consciousness. And awareness can, instead of identifying through attention with the objects, awareness sees itself in the still coolness of the silence of consciousness awake to itself. Awareness sees itself consciously in the field of unbounded consciousness that is still and simple, and remembers itself as pure awareness, remembers itself as being aware and awake to itself, as the aware seer of all that is moving and changing. We could say the seer of the seen. And as the seer of the seen remembers itself, identification with being someone, which is essentially an experience, it's in the realm of the seen. Experience is the seen. As the seer wakes up to be aware of the seen and independent of the seen, independent of experience, the seer remembers that it is free. The seer is pure awareness, consciously awake and aware of itself, and no longer identified with the objects of mind and body and person. The seer remembers that it is independent and free of mind, body, and ideas, free of name and form, utterly free as the seer of all. And yet when it sees itself, remembers itself, it remembers its awakeness, its aliveness, and its knowing of itself as simply being the presence that is present and awake to itself, here, now, ever present, ever free, ever clear, openness, empty of content. And in the emptiness of content, consciousness itself is still and smooth and acts as the perfect mirror for awareness to see itself and remember itself, wake up to itself in deep and shining remembrance, the self seeing itself in the light of consciousness, remembers itself, wakes up to the deep and alert remembering of itself as being the infinite being the openness, and not being something or someone, but being the being itself, the seer itself. Om Shiva, Om Shiva, Om Shiva. Pure awareness. Om Shiva, Om Shiva. The light of awareness awake and shining all by itself, remembering Shiva, not Jiva. Shiva, shining awakeness. Remember the shining awakeness of the self being itself remembering its shining self, just like this, pure awareness, awake. And this awake awareness, it's alive in the knowing of itself, just simply being. And the aliveness is the flow of life. Shakti, Shakti, flowing, grace, alive, life, Shakti flow, the aliveness, the Shiva and the Shakti, one, the silent, still, peaceful, unmoving, pure aware being, knowing itself and flowing in the knowing of itself, alive in the remembering, right? It's one, the dynamic being, the silent, still, immovable being, knowing itself and flowing in the alive remembering of itself. One being, one truth, one self. Radiant, shining, the pure light, shining, radiant as the heart that knows itself, shining as itself, radiant and free. And it is the knowing that is flowing, that flows as the grace that brings everything in the field of consciousness into the divine remembering, the unified field, the Atman. And the Atman is the glory, Atman, in the knowing, shining, remembering of itself is Brahman, is God, is the divine, oneness, utterly one in the knowing of itself, where Shiv and Shakti are one. There is Brahman, there is divinity, and that divinity is the shining, resonant light, Ma, divine light, pure light. Invite it in and be sure she will come. She will come and she will move in all of the ways that she is so willing, so compassionately willing to obscure herself, conceal herself in her own divine play. She is so willing to conceal herself in everything, in all of us, in absolutely all that is. She's willing to conceal herself in order that her grace be recognized in the flow of life. We recognize the flow of her grace first in the Shakti flow. We recognize the flow of grace first in the Shakti flow. But the Shakti flow, it carries us to the remembering of union of Shiv and Shakti, the remembering of the oneness, of the self, of the heart, all that is, the glory, the divine wholeness. She will carry us through all of the tests, the trials and tribulations that her grace can muster, so that we can be pure enough and transmute all of the vasanas and samskaras that can create distraction, so that we can transmute and come to a purity where the remembering can really truly shine in the knowing of itself, radiant and whole, divine, shining light. Not a stone is left unturned, because if there is anything hiding under any stone, that could keep us from the remembering of wholeness. So the flow of grace, it uncovers everything, it reveals everything as itself. It is revealing everything in the light as its very own self. Consciousness is consciously experiencing itself and knowing itself in the light of awareness. To know itself in its essence nature, in and as everything, in order to free the misunderstanding, in order to free every fiber, every thread, every subtlety, every nuance of mind consciousness into the pure flow of consciousness, so that everything can be seen in the light of awareness. Everything can be seen through, so that freedom can be known in the face of whatever is appearing on the surface of life, so that we are not fooled by the phenomena, but that we can receive the grace of the Ma, the Mother of God, in the dance of light that dances as all life. So we are not invested in the play of phenomena through story and drama and separation, but we are receiving the flow of grace in all of life as the light of divine wisdom that knows, that she knows, and everything is her offering. Her offering is her willingness to shine as everything, so that she can be known in and as everything. She moves as the field of consciousness. She moves and shines as the flow of life. And she shines as the light of pure awareness. And she shines as the light in all consciousness. She flows as the flow of life. The life itself is the flow of her grace. It is the flow of, we could say, creation. The flow of creation is her divine Leela, her divine play, where she is dancing with herself in and as everything. And the whole orchestration is this incredible invitation to know this truth through the receiving of the flow of grace, rejecting what is false. We know what is false because it is the limitation and the separation. And we say yes to the flow of grace in utter surrender, in surrender of the intellect and the beliefs and the ideas, the protections, the surrender into the being, into the flow of grace, receiving all of life as it is. We are being carried by the flow of grace, by the yes, by the devotion, by the pull of the longing, by the willingness to be invisible, to not be someone, is to surrender and disappear into divinity, into God, into the Mother, into the flow of grace. So we come to the knowing of the being in the deep, silent stillness of the immovable, the deep, undisturbable peace of being the pure, deep, silent being. The recognition here of the silent being, and that the knowing of the silent being, knowing itself, is alive, that there's an aliveness in the knowing, and the aliveness of the knowing is the flow of life itself. The flow of life itself is life eternal. It is the life that is free of body, free of confine. The life eternal is the timeless flow of life that is ever free and infinite, has never ever been captured within the bounds of body-mind. That life eternal and infinitely flowing within itself has always been free. And this is the knowing of yourself as being everywhere, ever present to yourself as the vast open field of awake awareness, consciously awake to yourself being the infinite field, everywhere, openness. And the aliveness is the aliveness of life, unconditioned, the aliveness of life that is ever alive in the knowing of itself, eternal, timeless being. And hear the flow of grace. Hear the flow of grace. And the flow of grace flows as the appearance of creation. It's the appearance of creation. It's appearing out of pure consciousness. And yet the patterns of consciousness have this ability to take in their patterning to create form and an ability to get stuck, an ability to take a position and to forget the flowing natural aliveness. So the invitation is this invitation for consciousness where it is stuck in discordant patterning to free itself in the light of awareness, to shake itself free of discordant patternings of limitation and protection and defense, and all of the ideas that then come forward as mind with believing that I am this one and this is my story, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is the way I live. All of these ideas, let the whole patterning just shake itself free, just shake itself free into the pure flowing field of consciousness, right? It can all free itself. It can shake itself free in the aliveness of the flow when we are resting as the awake awareness that can illuminate everything. we can illuminate the patternings, and in the illuminated field, the patterns have the spaciousness to free themselves, to untangle, to let go of protection and misunderstanding into the pure flowing river of consciousness flowing in itself to know itself and open to this incredible ocean that is the bliss of being, the nectarine bliss of being that is here when we just feel the felt sense of freedom. We do not want to follow the mind consciousness that says, what about the future? What about this? What about... We let that pattern untangle into the presence of now and just be here so fully that it's all there is, this presence here now, the simple being knowing itself and flowing as itself. So the deep, silent being, the knowing, the seer, frees itself from the seen, the objects of experience, shakes itself free, recognizes its utter freedom, and then opens to being the flow, which is pure seeing. And we could say that seeing, it includes the seer and the seen as a oneness. So any separation of the seer, the seen, and the seeing, the flow, dissolves into the oneness of pure seeing. Just the flow, just the flow. And in the flow, of course, there's knowing. There's not so much the knower, but the knower is one in the flow of knowing, the knowing of the being. And here we have the Atman. Here we have the oneness, the one unified field. And anything in the unified field that feels to be discordant, of course, it's not separate in any way, but the flow of the unified field, knowing itself, is this flow of grace that brings everything into the flow in the light of simple remembering, where consciousness is consciously awake and remembering itself, illuminating itself. The discordant patterns untangle and release. And so in this whole flows of what could feel to be discordance, untangle and release, where karmic obscurations and vasanas just disappear. The most stubborn ones, the ones that really are holding a pattern, like a shape, they will come forward by the flow of grace. They will come forward in appearance. They will come into manifest appearance, so they can be seen in reflection and experienced and lived through, in order to free themselves through the lived experience. So the lived experience is too the same flow of grace, and the lived experience, the willingness and openness as the awake being to receive the flow of grace, of life, whatever it looks like, and to keep opening and opening and opening to the openness in all that appears. We could say it's to receive the light essence in everything, to receive the divine grace in everything. It releases the clear seeing from fogginess. It releases clear seeing, clear vision from the foggy, misty obscurations. It releases the deep felt sense of knowing from the dullness of the obscurations. It releases all the ideas that are the false self, the misunderstanding, releases all of the protection into the deep remembering that is light, pure, resonant light, pure light resonating at finer and finer frequencies. And as the frequencies that we can recognize as the consciousness get finer, we open to finer and finer rememberings in the intelligence of our divine nature. We open through and out of human condition into divinity, really, into the divine wholeness, and finer and finer recognitions of divinity, of divine wholeness. And as we come to know the divinity, the divine, the God, the mother that we are in truth, what we belong to, we move through these layers where we first feel like we're in surrender and trusting and we're in faith. And then we open to something deeper where we feel to be in service to the divine, in faith, in trust, in service to the divine. And we open into finer and finer feelings where we feel to be an instrument of the divine, that grace is flowing through us, that life is flowing through us, that we're an instrument, that everything is somehow this flow that is flowing. And we're just an instrument for that flow of grace. And here still can be the vestiges, let's say, of being in service to the divine. And in a way, the faith deepens into the Shraddha, the faith deepens into the Shraddha, and the Shraddha is the deep faith that is self-born. It comes out of the knowing of yourself, and as the knowing recognition of yourself is felt finer and finer, that faith, that knowing it's unquestionable. It's this wordless knowing. It's a deep, deep recognition of yourself in yourself. And again, finer and finer feelings open, more light, more resonance, finer frequencies of light open, more of a sense of wholeness. And here the remembering of what you belong to, what we belong to. In a way, the sense is of being the child of the divine and belonging to that and being made out of that, of being completely inseparable in essence from that divine. And in that, the knowing deeper of the divine wholeness, the divine nature, where you can't really tell where you end and mother begins. You can't find an edge, a separateness, right? And all of these layers that we open through, we can have flashes and tastes and senses of all of this in any given fresh moment, because it's like a gyroscopic opening and remembering. It's not moving in a linear way. It's not moving in a way of of layers or anything that we can keep track of. It's moving ever wider, ever deeper, ever taller, right? there's parts of the divine that are opening this way, taller, taller. Parts of the divine more like the heart opening ever wider, wider, wider this way. It's directionless, really, but it's stretching and opening. And then the flow is gyroscopic, right? It's not just in this one direction, stretch, stretch, stretch. In this direction, stretch, stretch, stretch. No, it's flowing and stretching and opening and finer feelings and more light and more remembering and more grace, right? It's moving in this effervescent, ever alive way. So the frequency gets finer and brighter, more brilliance, right? Wider, deeper, vaster, opening to your own immensity, your own radiance, your own fine, fine, divine frequency, this fine resonance of light that we move through. And open more fully to, where every word is the resonance, like mantra. Every word is holy. Every word is the divine resonance. Every word is mother, right? Every word is that flow. Every movement, every gesture is that flow, right? Every movement, every gesture, every movement of body consciousness is like mudra, right? Every gesture is the mother, right? So we start to really feel the holiness of the flow of speech and the holiness of all gesture, the holy flow of all gesture, that we're never apart from holiness. We're never apart from Ma, never apart from the divine light that is. The whole life, the whole flow of the life is recognized to be an offering, is a flow of devotion, pure devotion that is an offering of grace into grace, light into light, God into God, Ma into Ma, right? It's this flow of pure devotion flowing into itself, ever flowing into itself. This flow of light flowing into itself, remembering itself as itself, right? It's the consciousness, the light of consciousness, awakening and remembering itself in the light of awareness, and remembering in the flow, in the essence nature, the divine wholeness, the fineness, the incredible fineness, that there's nothing apart, nothing apart. And so as we illuminate everything that seems to be discordant and create separation, let us illuminate everything as a flow of grace, flowing into itself, flowing into the remembering of oneness. So observing the thoughts, observing the patternings, the habits, the preferences, all of the ways that the someone keeps someone alive, flowing to surrender all of that through illumination into the flow of grace, where remembering is happening in consciousness, in the field of intelligence, in the light, in the illumination. A flow of grace, a flow of devotion, a flow that is a constant offering, that every moment of the life is an offering back into the divine light. It's never held onto by the mind and the someone as being mine, my life, I want, I need, right? Every moment, a flow that is an offering back into the ocean of grace. And here, the flow of the ocean of grace being a flow of pure devotion, being a flow of offering and offering itself back into itself again and again. Here, the flow is recognized to be the flow of bliss. The flow of bliss is what creation is. The flow of bliss is the ananda, it's the divine play. It's a flow of bliss. The whole of creation is a flow of divine bliss. And we come to recognize this not by creating moods or ideas, but by surrendering everything that we are, that we have imagined that we can hold in separation, by surrendering all of it into the flow of life, into the flow of grace, into the flow of creation, into the flow of Shakti Ma, right? We surrender it all in to the flow, and the flow of Shakti Ma, the flow of Shakti flows to bring us deeper into the finer and finer resonances of the mother, right? That the Shaktis, her Shaktis, her Shakti, and her Shaktis are her vehicles, right? Her instruments, right? So that flow, it carries us deeper and deeper and deeper. So we don't need to understand any of these words that are coming, because as the words come, they are the flow of grace. They are the offering. They are the flow of devotion. They are the flow of utter surrender. They are the flow, flowing into itself. And where the resonance is felt as these words come, that resonance is this flow of devotion, this flow of surrender. And here, that flow where all that we are is an offering, that every word is this flow of mantra. Every word, when we're resting in alignment, longing, and offering, every word is that flow of devotion. Every gesture, every movement is that offering where we are constantly asking, take this and this and this, and take this too, and take this too, and this too. Take this and take this into you. Take what I am into you. May all that I have imagined myself to be taken into you. Right? Om. Jai. So the Om is like the prostration, the Om, the prostration, and Jai is the celebration, it's the victory. And in a way, the Jai is like this prayer that's the celebration of the knowing that already knows. So the Jai Ma says victory to the light that is already whole divinity, victory to the light that is already resonating in utter purity, victory to the wholeness of the light that is already shining, right, in utter brilliance. So the Jai is the recognition within us of what is already here and true and shining and divine and whole, immaculate, right? It's this recognition. So the Om is the recognition, like the prostration into pure awareness, deep peace. And the Jai is the flow of the celebration that recognizes in utter faith, the true Shraddha, what we are, what we already are in truth. Every word, the mantra, every word a flow of devotion. And when the life is truly aligned and we are resting in the depths of knowing, then every word is truly mantra, whatever is spoken. It's about the offering, the flow of grace into itself. Every movement, a gesture, a mudra that is offering itself into itself. The longing itself, the willingness to feel the longing in its purity. What is this pull? What is this longing? What is the satiated sense of falling into the longing? What will satiate this longing? Just to open to the longing and feel the wholeness in the presence of being. To feel the wholeness, the sense of satiated wholeness, so that the longing and the wholeness are here as like a flow of devotion, a flow of the offering, that just the willingness to feel what we are truly longing for is an invitation to feel the wholeness, the fullness of what we are in truth. So to feel the aliveness of the resonance of recognition as these words come. Feel the aliveness, the deep aliveness of the flow of grace, the Shakti flow carrying itself into itself, knowing itself, and knowing how to, as pure intelligence, carrying itself deeper and deeper into itself. You know who you are. You are the eternal, divine presence of being. You have never, ever left yourself. You have always been pure and simple and whole and free. The knowing is alive and awake in the presence of being. The remembering is here in the shining of the self, knowing itself and shining radiant as the wide open heart that just is. Do not be fooled by appearances. Do not be sidetracked by living by assumptions and false understanding. Do not settle for what does not feel like enough, because it is not. It is not the full picture. Do not rest until the resonance of divine remembering is sparked and blazing in the divine knowing of itself and utterly free in a wordless remembering that is without doubt. It is who you are. It is the truth of who you are. And right here now, the resonance carries the remembering of this essence nature, this divine truth that you are, that you have always been. Let the silence sing its song. Let the innermost being whisper the silent truth to itself and sing the aliveness. Jai, Jai, Ma, Jai, Ma, Jai, Ma. The victory is already won. Do not be fooled by the appearances. The victory is already won in the heart that is love, that is light. And yet, in our human realm, there is still work. There is still work. So we must rest in our sincerity and devotion and continue to offer and receive and offer and receive in order to transmute and uplift the whole in all of the ways that we can, to be the vehicle, instruments of service in our humanness, to uplift the whole of the consciousness in its natural evolution, that we take full and sincere, passionate responsibility to know ourself. It is in the knowing of the true self that we uplift the whole, that this life is for this, for freedom. It is for this divine service to be lived as a way of transmuting and embodying divinity on the surface of life. Where you feel the knowing, alive truth of this is where you are free and eternal as the timeless divine being, as light itself, shining, 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 So when we come to the dissolving into pure consciousness and this willingness to come to being the openness, invisible, we are in true service, not needing the mind to be the master, but invisible. We are in true service as the light of being. We can shine as this light, as this love, right on the surface of life. So where there is a resonance of recognition, allow the nectarine, blissful aliveness of the recognition to be deeply imbibed, to drink in the nectarine bliss of the resonance of recognition, where truth is recognized. Drink it in. The drinking in of the bliss is what refines all of the systems to receive more, finer frequencies of who you are before you imagined yourself to be.